So this is going to be called Go Forth and Let Your Brain Halves Procreate. And if it doesn't make sense now or later, don't worry, you know, it doesn't matter. And it started with a strange kind of art project. And in an experimental process of substituting the terminology of the arcane and the occult with that of a more general artistic one, an idea manifested itself to construct a magical being, a golem, not with arcane formula and rituals based in occult lore and mythology, but by parts of artistic creation, whether conceptual, tangible, immaterial, visual, oral, written, musical, sculptural, plastic, whatever. The sum of the parts would constitute a voice and a possible agenda that could set the stage for more elaborate, similar workings. Where this idea came from, I have no idea. A skeptic or an empirically based contemporary mind would probably negate or devalue the concept as such, claiming it ridiculous or bordering on the insane. But I have been to a different school in which a strong creative force manifests itself exactly because the process is not dissected and it's not fragmented. I take it for what it is, and I really love it thoroughly. And I realize that what it is I'm doing is simply embracing the irrational. I am thereby open to scorn, yes, but only from those who fear the same process or potential freedom in themselves. Regardless of whether this project will be like a subconscious ego trip, if there is such a thing, or a gesamtdisciplinary working together with others, it is based on the magical idea that seed can sprout in different kinds of soil. If we use the irrational and potentially proto-creative mind frame in a ritual or an executionary moment, what we put in there into our specific artwork will sooner or later have an effect, regardless of whether anyone actually partakes of it or not. I have called this meta-programming, because the programming is done consciously and subconsciously at the same time, and because it is an experiment in programming as much as it is in art per se. It is in many ways also a visionary process, because it sets in motion a direction towards the desired. It could be grand, radical, emotional, overwhelming, basically visionary in the traditional sense, but it could just as well be down-to-earth, materialistic, or ego-based. As we all know, similar structures, ideas, and techniques have been integrated in magic and alternative sciences throughout the ages, usually veiled in quite complex esoteric symbols. During this past century, however, they have been stripped of all subconscious and religious poetry and developed into techniques of brainwashing and advertising. It is as if the creative strains are there with us all the time, but what differs is how we relate to them, or how we are allowed to relate to them. In my simplified examples here, the romanticized magician of yesteryear seeking answers, epiphanies, and poetic philosopher's stones in genuinely experimental ways, versus the cynical, stripped-down, ultra-rational, and control-based manipulation of causal reactive patterns in the human mind. One key to understanding this dynamic is, of course, the concept of motivation. What motivates people? It may sound a little bit trite or again simplified, but I think that if we look slightly beyond the basic instincts, then comfort and safety are two main motivations. And one way of experiencing this in life is simply by succumbing to authority. The authority being whomever or whatever can provide that comfort and safety. And that there are a lot of those whomevers around, we know very well from finance, business, politics, religion, media, education, parents, entertainment, edutainment, and many, many other things. Is there perhaps a synthesis between these two apparently diametrical stances? Is there perhaps a way in which the authoritarian comfort zones could become a little bit more than merely a passive waiting for death, albeit filled with digital bling? I have no answer to that one, but I do seriously suspect that substituting the terminology and thereby changing the arenas could become quite an interesting trip. Again, by clothing the proto-creative spirit of occultism not in a robe of arcane sigils, but of visionary ideas and aestheticized emotions, containing varying degrees of general philosophy and also personal will. If the world has gone almost wholly public, globalized, and interconnected, then perhaps the art of will and the art of vision need to tag along in there, so that the arena doesn't become a digitized marketplace and nothing more. Contemporary life in our quite chaotic sphere contains many conflicting messages. We are experiencing, on one hand, an almost force-fed individualism, but at the same time we aren't really encouraged to go against the grain or think too critically. The uprooting of established cultural patterns and a genuine self-esteem creates an insecurity, the void of which is filled with tempting quick-fix solutions. The fundamentalist approach on one hand, and the New Age laissez-faire exoticism on the other. But what signifies our culture most of all is the fact that fact has been run over by fiction. Fiction is all over the place. Fiction is our new reality. This is interesting because something similar has never occurred before. A lot of things have occurred before, but something like this simply, it hasn't happened. And it's no longer merely a distinct diversion or an escapism or a mild brainwashing through entertainment. Quite simply, there is now more fiction than fact in our lives. We live in it, and it is, for good and bad, completely beyond control. We can recall Robert Anton Wilson's term for the doubling of information. One doubling of information he called one Jesus. I would like to extend that creative description and call one doubling of fiction one Saint Paul. And up until the 21st century, I speculate, but I assume that we were up to 1 million Saint Pauls, meaning 1 million doublings of fiction, counting from the birth of Christ. Since the new millennium, again I speculate, I would say we have 1 million Saint Paul's square. Sometimes it really is difficult to discern what is fact and what is fiction, and perhaps it is now even pointless to try. Those dealing with the technological aspects of all these things usually refer to, quote, information, quote, end quote. They say there has been an exponential increase in information. Well, to say the least. Regardless of any expressed purpose, fiction uses meta-programming inherently. When we integrate a work of fiction, regardless of the medium, the experience itself becomes a memory, a piece of information stored with everything else in our cerebral storage space. It all adds up, and it all affects us all the time. Schools and universities used to be the places of the seminal learning. And of course, they remain in that position, but I would like to claim that they have become secondary in importance to various aspects of fiction. We are no longer taught things in a direct way to the same extent as we used to, but rather meta-programmed by fictional proxies. This, of course, is a strictly philosophical observation, and if you want a moral evaluation or an anthropological evaluation, I think you have to go through the raw material yourselves, and no doubt that's a lifelong process. But I do think that it's all about intention. What is the intention of the meta-programmer? Answers to that kind of cui bono, who gains, stance will probably reveal quite a lot. Usually, transformative energy originates in causal diametrics, cause and effect, action, reaction, etc. In Hegelian terms, the thesis and antithesis provoking a synthesis eventually. And perhaps that's a vital and essential ingredient of human creativity in general. The transcending of extremes and the integration of both, again, eventually. If that's the case, very simplified, then spiritual poetry doesn't perhaps need to do battle against profit-driven empirical analysis. However, in this diametrical opposition lies very powerful charges. In the merging or the clash of these lies ecstasy. And within this state of ecstasy lies the potential of vision. This potential vision, or perhaps vision proper, will be a central force of the mega golem, as I call it, not just a regular golem, but a mega golem. Holistic integration, epiphanic vision, a passionate union of opposites, the left and right brain halves squeezing out the pineal gland into a state of perpetual synaptic distortion and hopingly synesthetic bliss. The vision is a concept connecting us to the very first moments of human culture. Giving voice to what has been experienced not only on the outside, but also on the inside. Religions and magical systems have harbored this very concept and kept it safe in many ways. When good as an inspirational May maker in general culture, and when bad as mere propaganda and control. This leads to the relationship between visionary art and technology, since we're living in such a technology-imbued culture. Look at the artwork, or listen to it, or whatever needs doing, and ask yourselves, is there a vision that's seeking direct manifestation, or is there a technological experimentation mimicking something that has not been essentially experienced? To clarify this a bit, I think this question is applicable to basically any contemporary artistic discipline, but perhaps music, photography, and movies specifically. Consider training the eye in photography versus deep diving into the oceans of Photoshop filters. Ditto for ecstatic music versus sequencing software, plug-in filters. Or raw emotional acting versus special effects filters in video editing. I may be slightly mistaken here in using the word versus in such a carefree manner. Again, we can always combine, best of both worlds, etc. But I wonder if there wasn't something to Malcolm McLaren's incessant ramblings about the concept karaoke culture. If one May only refers to another May that's just like it, what happens? What kind of soil will there be? And is it really possible to fake it until you make it when it comes to visionary art? I don't think so. Here's a little model or overview. Visionary 1, we can call that V1, a work stemming from a vision that sought its own immediate manifestation in a tangible medium regardless of the quality of the execution, sort of raw data processed in the very moment. Visionary 2, V2, a work describing what appears to be V1, yet most often of a high quality. Refined, reconstructed transmissions with a huge manipulatory potential, the integration of sigils, symbols, subliminal messages, like commercials, or just general emotion evokers. Both V1 and V2 are essential to and in the mega golem, the raw subjective experience as well as the poetic reinterpretation. Seemingly arbitrary decisions come to life, seemingly different wills unite in form, and the purpose being to ground these energies to allow for a multifaceted manifestation of the integrated wills. And perhaps now you'll ask, won't this creation be highly schizophrenic, given that several artists and magicians will be invited to participate? Well, I certainly hope so. Robert A. Heinlein, at a science fiction convention in Denver in 1941, said about his work as an author, of fiction we might add, quote, "The important thing is to hang on to your sanity, to preserve sanity while it happens, no matter what bad things happen to the world," end quote. This is, of course, essentially a left brain perspective. And to balance this, let's evoke the right brain half of emotional misanthrope Emile Cioran. Quote, "The healthy are not real. They have everything except being, which is uniquely conferred by uncertain health," end quote. Be that as it may, if we follow in the trails of the poetic yet slightly illogical assumptions of Cioran, we could postulate that madness within creations that have touched upon both V1 and V2 and have manifested unexpected, non-linear, non-causal, or perhaps supra-logical results could be looked upon as mutations. Ecstatic mutations that turn into new influential memes that take shape as seed, and so on, integrating themselves into the Atman, the world soul, or, as it's now called, the social network grid, or the virtual actual. Epiphanic states and revelatory mind frames are the very essences of the visionary as a concept. That hopingly goes for science too, and surely also other disciplines and walks of life. I think that the beneficial aspects generally originate in temporarily allowing a spontaneous cross-fertilization and a breaking down of moral, programmed, traditional, as well as synaptic barriers. Preconceptions dissolved by either subtle transformation or violent cataclysmic transgression. If these mishaps, evoked or not, are not allowed their due course, are not allowed to exist even, then human culture will be but mechanical and binary, a greasing of the status quo machine, an endless twilight saga of the predictable, the measurable, and the causal. Quote, "We happen to live in a period of sudden and drastic change in a good many of the things that happen to us. I think it is extremely important that we be prepared for that change, and for that reason, I think that science fiction fans are better prepared to face the future than the ordinary run of people around them, because they believe in change," end quote. That was Robert A. Heinlein again, still from 1941. Believe in change? Sure, but isn't there also a slight chance that generations upon generations of science fiction and fantasy readers bring their memes into adult working creative life, and that, in fact, is what's shaping a large portion of our technological culture. Even in the future, we will always come back to the hen or the egg Quan, unless, of course, we take mutations and quantum leaps into serious active consideration, and I really think that we should. When I read people's minds at lectures like this or talks, I usually find a doubt, what is he really talking about? I can't blame you for that. I should make clear perhaps then that what I usually strive to talk about is that I endorse and encourage this kind of creative madness and the generation and cultivation of epiphanic memes. I endorse and I encourage psychonautic behavior, because only through these kinds of joyful mutations can we develop a new mind frame that can carry us onwards in a life-affirming way. I used to think that this perspective was a result of escapism, perhaps, or a psychological emotional fulfillment of some kind, but it's not really. It's about making a contribution to this unlimited collage, the quantum quilt, that is the overall human existence on this planet and in this omniverse. History writing in 4 or even more dimensions. History not written by professional, meaning paid, historians, but by literal amateurs, amateur, meaning lovers. And now I shapeshift and become the devil's advocate. We all feel comfortable and safe within the arts and within magic. That's our comfort zone. Shouldn't then all comfort zones be challenged? How convinced can we really be that our comfort zone is superior to those of the left-brainers? However, and now I'm back again, concerning this recent revelation of the Higgs particle. This is a headline from a Swedish newspaper, and I'm sure it was the same headline all over the world. Quote, "The discovery provides answers about our existence." End quote. Really, more so than literature, more so than art, poetry, philosophy? I sincerely doubt that. Science fiction has become science fact, has become some kind of science steroid entertainment. What really goes on in those Swiss tunnels? I would really like to know that. Aren't they basically reconstructing a massive ejaculation? Raw data accumulated by technological observation and analysis, not by experiencing firsthand on an individual level, and apparently not by visionary techniques. For a while, I was tempted to include this CERN tunnel, its setup, and all 10,000 scientists as the reproductive system of the mega golem. The scientists themselves can be the cosmic sperm they're looking for. However, I refrain from doing this because I suspect that there are other things going on. 10,000 scientists in a secluded area, $10 billion a year, and all they essentially produce is a press conference displaying a computer-generated graphic of what might be a particle that's likely similar to some Big Bang component. I hope that you'll excuse me if I prefer to wait for the mothership, which I hear is coming soon, by the way. Seeking the so-called origin of life and the universe in such an abstracted and complicated manner, I feel, is a kind of a reversal of faith in one's own individual potential and thereby in the future in general. Scientific projects that are kept secret or incomprehensible at a very high price usually bring havoc and massive destruction. That has happened many times before. Humans seemingly never learn. The mega golem, on the other hand, promotes constructive faith in the future and inherently already has all the answers. They're not secret and they don't cost a thing. What matters for the mega golem is charge and discharge, passion, contrast, conflict, energy, ejaculation, emission, the strength of the moment in its own dissolving. There are no more supernovas or black holes in the universe, only an endless multicolored flow of energy that is a reflection of subjective truth. What's not to love about that? In fact, if you so desire, you can absolutely be that dissolved moment yourself. And if you so desire, you can be your own mega golem. Is analytical empiricism a religion? The current religious reversal syndrome, which means the longing for the exotic, whatever it is, or whatever it may be, is a result of insecurity with the given prefabricated authorities. And the current militant atheism is just another new religion that provides comfort in a world which is becoming more and more chaotic and harder to decipher. People cling for straws, whether they're rainbow-colored New Age ones, fundamentally monotheistic ones, or, again, rationalistic, atheistic, scientific ones. Models and grids of this authoritarian comforting kind are apparently needed in the human psyche. Now that we are free to choose grid like we are with food in the supermarket, it's obvious that we're still facing diametrics rather than a mellow and intelligent synthesis. And the pendulum certainly swings aggressively these days. I believe in God, says one. That's absolutely ridiculous, says the other, who then proudly confesses he believes in the Higgs particle. It's almost too easy for me, perhaps for you also, to ridicule them. But then again, it's as easy for them to ridicule me, and of course also you. There is always danger in a locked diametrical stance, and we should all be very aware of that. For all we know, the mothership could be fueled by Higgs particles. And the Zen, or short path attitude to our possible dichotomy, could simply be to keep an open mind, and then open it slightly more, to mutate the modalities of the mind. If we can invoke, evoke, and provoke a joint subjectivity and a random objectivity, half of the battle is won. Which, logically at least, means that half the battle remains, but that we'll leave for another time, I think. And if we stick with Heinlein, just for the hell of it, there is a section in his novel called Waldo, which touches upon the necessity of human speculation. It is perhaps the uniting glue between art and science, the glue that, when sniffed, poses hypotheses and revealing what-if scenarios. Quote, "Suppose chaos were king, and the order we thought we detected in the world about us a mere phantasm of the imagination. Where would that lead us?" In that case, Waldo decided, it was entirely possible that a 10-pound weight did fall 10 times as fast as a 1-pound weight until the day the audacious Galileo decided in his mind that it was not so. Perhaps the whole meticulous science of ballistics derived from the convictions of a few firm-minded individuals who had sold this notion to the world. Perhaps the very stars were held firm in their courses by the unvarying faith of the astronomers. Orderly cosmos created out of chaos by mind. End quote. Meta-programming through fiction and through art is the most scientific and the most poetic way there is of solving our problems, at least according to me. The words affix themselves to the worlds. The worlds filter themselves through the words. The images become parts of the imaginations, the nations of images, all seeking each other out like grounded magnets, polarities, or cruising sybarites of the night. If we stop and look, we can see a pattern or several, and we can use these patterns as tools more than ever before in our own quantum quilts and our own mega golem processes. Let's not forget, in the beginning, there was neither Big Bang, nor a Higgs particle, nor a Kabbalistic proton, nor a swirling rune. In the beginning, there was simply a one-day symposium of free spirits in Brighton, and several parallel universes were brought to life, everlasting, with not one word, but two. Thank you.